Welcome to the GPLama YouTube channel and to a video on the MAGENE T300 Plus Smart Trainer, an updated version of the T300 that I reviewed back in 2021. Now this week, MAGENE have released version 0.108 of the firmware for the T300 Plus that I've been putting to the test, so I thought it was a good opportunity to put together a video on this trainer. So coming up in this video, I'll cover off everything that's new with the T300 Plus. So if you're already familiar with the T300, I'll get straight to the point of what's been improved. Then if you're not familiar with this trainer already, I'll cover the technical specifications, what's in the box, my ride experience, and of course a deep dive into the data recorded from this trainer after many hours of riding. Okay, kicking off with what's new, a summary. Now, a lot of these do directly address a number of the pain points that I found with the T300 a few years ago. So kudos to MAGENE for taking all that feedback on board and producing a better product. Kicking off with number 1 point there, temperature compensation and belt efficiency compensation have been optimized, which addresses the thermal drift problem. Good to see that one there. Cadence data is now broadcast over ANT+ and Bluetooth. The trainer now supports standards such as Bluetooth FTMS and ANT+ FEC, giving it universal compatibility with any training software out there. And with that Bluetooth FTMS support, it does support spin down within Zwift. Update number 4 on the list, they've added power meter bridging, allowing you to pair your power meter on the bike to the trainer. If you want to squeeze a little bit more accuracy out of that trainer, it's also very useful if you're using Apple TV to have sensors bridged like that. Number 5, they list improved internal flywheel structure and optimize the electronic current control logic. I guess we'll put that to the test with erg mode. And number 6 there, the T300 Plus now comes with a cassette as well as a quick release skewer and a front wheel riser. So later in the video, we put most of those to the test to see if those improvements have actually improved the product. Pulling up the technical specifications of this, I'll do a quick whip through these. Pretty standard stuff. Direct drive smart trainer with interactive control, sim mode, erg mode, so you do remove your rear wheel for this one. Bike compatibility out of the box comes with all the adapters, 130, 135 quick release, 12 by 142, 12 by 148 through axle adapters. There is no pivoting rear axle on this trainer, so there's no support for the Wahoo Kicker Climb or the Elite Riser. The free hub, Shimano HG 8 to 12 speed compatible free hub. SRAM XDR is an aftermarket option for this trainer. The cassette supplied is a Shimano 1128 compatible cassette. Supported connections to the trainer, ANT+ power, ANT+ FEC, Bluetooth FTMS. Over those data channels, you'll get power, speed, cadence, speed only coming in over ANT+ FEC or Bluetooth FTMS. If you're using a virtual platform such as Zwift, you don't need to worry about speed coming from the trainer. That comes from the virtual world. Power accuracy claimed plus or minus 2%. Although if you want to squeeze a little bit more out of that and you've got a power meter on your bike, you can bridge that. Spin down calibration, max grade simulation 22%, max wattage 2600 watts, which I'm incapable of testing. In fact, I'm pushing just to get half there, but you'll see that in the data later on. Noise level, it's quiet. They do claim 56 decibels at 1.5 meters at 25 km/h flywheel. That really does depend on the environment that it's tested in though. Runs on mains power. Has status lights on the front to indicate the connections. There's a 7-color LED light, which is a training zone indicator or disco, depending on how hard you pedal. It has adjustable or leveling feet. You can do firmware upgrades and configuration via the MAGENE utility app, and the unit weight comes in at 18 kilos, so it's not light, but that's a good thing. Price-wise, this comes in at $749 US, and availability, well, it depends on the region. Here in Australia, this trainer is not available, so the best that I could advise is jump on a web browser, pull up Google and search for this trainer and find out your nearest distributor or stockist if you're after one. Now, based on those specifications, this is what I would consider a mid-range Generation 1 trainer, where in my categorization of trainers, Generation 2 would be a trainer that has things like Wi-Fi, DIRCON, 10 Hz race mode, auto calibration, and sensor bridging, although this does have sensor bridging for power meters. Now, MAGENE do have what I would consider a Generation 2 trainer, and that's the T600. But today's video is about the T300 Plus. The T300 Plus comes fully assembled, so nothing to do other than unboxing and install your bike. However, the version you're seeing here is a pre-release version, so I did need to put my own cassette on before installing my bike. Updating the firmware and confirming the settings can be done with the MAGENE utility that is available for iOS and Android. And then once all configured, connecting to Zwift via Bluetooth, I had no problems whatsoever. I also used ANT+ power to dual record for the data analysis we'll get into in a little while. Onto a sound check. Sound check 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Free wheel check 1, 2, 3. Very quiet. So all good there, the loudest part being the drivetrain, which could use a little waxing. And once the fans are fully cranked, you definitely can't hear the trainer. Now for the on-bike experience, and I can report the sim mode responsiveness was excellent. Those gradient changes through Titans Grove were very, very quick. There was no delay with what I was seeing and the resistance that I was feeling through the pedals. Into a workout and erg mode with the T300 Plus, and I can report it has a very, very stable resistance set point. So no waving up or down. And with the latest firmware, those resistance changes are very quick, between 1 to 2 seconds to adjust between intervals. Now to stress the trainer a little harder with a couple of sprints, and there definitely was enough resistance to put me to the test. The short sprint here. And once I'd recovered just a little bit, another harder, longer sprint just here. The overall ride experience and ride feel with that weighted flywheel is that it's smooth. It feels very much like a kicker or a kicker core. In regard to the data that's transmitted from the T300 Plus, there are two observations that I had. Firstly, the power reporting is very, very smooth in both sim and erg mode, even with erg mode smoothing turned off within the configuration. And secondly, the cadence accuracy is good, but can vary depending on the sim terrain that you're pedaling on. Now, something like Titans Grove that is an absolute roller coaster can be problematic. There are no issues in erg or other more consistent sim mode riding, but for virtual terrain like Titans Grove, where it's up and down and that resistance curve really drops off, it can have trouble reporting your exact cadence at the time. Now, this is true for a lot of other trainers that estimate your cadence from your peak power output with each pedal revolution. Okay, with the on-bike experience covered, it's now onto my favorite website, the DCR Analyzer tool, where we can compare multiple sources of data as an overlay and see how things stack up. I've got a ton of data sets to go through. I've trimmed it down to 3, which represents my overall experience with this trainer over the last few months. Starting off here with the MAGENE T300 Plus up against the Powdermax NGCO. Now, this was prior to the recent firmware update, so you can just see where things have progressed to as we jump through the hoops and do more testing. So starting off here with the warm-up, obviously, and into the 200 watts, 250 watt steady state. First thing we see there is no thermal drift, no trending up, no trending down. Actually, I went the wrong way then, didn't I? You can see there on the screen, everything's looking pretty smooth. The data there, the blue line being very smoothed out of the MAGENE, but from the Powdermax NGCO, it's not smooth, so it is jumping around a little bit, but no trends in either direction. All looking good. 215, 215. Brilliant. Into the sprint, and not too far off with the sprint, but I'll dive into the sprints later on because this is something they have addressed with the firmware 108. Overs and unders, and again, something else they've improved with later firmware. So this is a bit of a journey of where things have been and where they are now. You can see the erg takes about 3 or 4 seconds to come up to speed, and once it's there, it's pretty good. So what have we got? 206, 209 with some up and downs. If I grab even closer, 252, 254. Yep, even closing that gap a little further. That response time to changes in resistance, you'll see later on, has been improved with later firmwares, but just to give you an indication that it does work in erg, brings you up to speed, doesn't hit you like a truck, it's all good. Into the flywheel speed test, and the slow flywheel speed test indicates that it's able to hold that 225 watt zone pretty good. The previous steady states you've seen, the 200 and 250, they were done in the small ring mid cassette, so I skip that and go straight to the big ring here and here. Not too bad for a higher flywheel speed. If you want that sort of high inertia on top of the gear feel, it's not too bad for the 5217, I think that was on the back. And then putting in the 5211 on the back, spinning things right up where most trainers fall apart. This wasn't too bad, but still overshooting by probably around 20 watts or so, trending down towards the end. Most trainers failed that specific test, but that's nothing too much to worry about. Then just riding along, let's have a look at that. What have we got? 128, 128. That's all looking pretty good. On to data set number 2, another Lama lab test, the T300 Plus up against the Asioma Duos and the SRM PM9. Warm-up section through here, you'll see the trainer just needing a bit of a warm-up before coming into its own, so 206, 214, 213 for the first 10 minutes, into a sprint. Once everything's settled and stabilised, it was into the Lama lab test for this. Again, the Asioma Duos, PM9 looking good, within a few watts of the MAGENE, and also the MAGENE being in the right direction too, just 2 watts less. Not a problem at all with that I see. Into the sprint, all looking pretty good there too. Peak powers of just under 1200 watts, no major separations. Overs and unders. Again, the smoothing from the T300 Plus is kind of getting in the way of what I would call the accuracy there. But you can see on the pedals and on the spider, all looking pretty much one for one there, and it providing a good experience. Flywheel speed test, same as what we saw before, rewards a slower flywheel, but stepping it up too far results in a bit of an overread, but trending down. Lastly, on this data set, a slow ramp test and another sprint. And again, things looking, well, as I'd expect there, especially with the trainer having such smoothing to the power channel. So as I'm riding along stable here, it's all good. As I step up pretty quick, the pedals and the spider, the SRM, respond pretty quickly. The trainer taking a few seconds just to come back up, stabilizing, and right there at the end again, as I just accelerate where I actually give up at around 650 watts. The trainer's just lagged a little bit, but it's not robbing me of too many watts there after a second or so. And into a final sprint here. Again, things looking pretty good there with the Faveros being pretty spiky there at the start and my legs dying pretty quickly. But again, no separation of 200, 300, 400 watts. Finally, data set number 3. This is a Titans Grove startup. This is up against the SRM PM9. So a few watts low there as things warm up and as the roller coaster goes up and down. What does that look like for the cadence, which I discussed in my ride experience section of this video? Well, it does look pretty ugly when it comes to the cadence, where it's trying to estimate really where it can't. You can see me spinning up there with the SRM and the trainer just sort of holding back a little bit through here, not being able to pick those peak spikes as I'm pedaling with each revolution. So cadence, well, overall the average there, 83, 85, not too bad, but the instantaneous cadence that it's recording is a bit off going through those roller coasters. Again, not uncommon for these trainers. But everywhere else, the cadence, let's just say the steady state section through here in the erg mode, 90 versus 90, that's all good there. Back to the power side of things and to a new section of the Lama lab test that I've introduced for 2024. Previously, the lowest level of erg that I would be testing on a trainer was 150 watts. That's okay if your FTP is 200, 300, maybe 400. But what if your FTP is only 120 and you want to do work in those lower zones? Well, this is going to answer that question with the new updated Lama lab test. Starting off with 60, 80, 100, and 120 zones for erg mode. We'll see how trainers perform. So I perform this typically within the warm-up of the trainer. And again, it's revealed something quite interesting here. So the MAGENE T300 Plus doesn't quite hold erg mode at about 90 to 95 RPM at 60 watts erg. Now that definitely is very, very low, but I think it's an interesting observation. As I collect more and more data, we'll get a good indication of what trainers work across more zones. So here the T300 Pluses are holding about 10 watts low at 60, stepping it up to 80, much better, stepping it up to 100, a little bit better again, and 120, again, a little bit more stable and able to hold that set point. So the takeout from that, which is the first trainer that I've put to this test, is that 60 watts may just be a little bit too low in that gearing at that flywheel speed. Now stepping back into the standard test, which is 200, 250, or my previous testing, again looking for that thermal drift, nothing there, everything looking good. 222, 221.8 up against the SRMs. SRMs being obviously a little bit more spiky without that smoothing. Diving into the sprints there, a little short sprint where I pretty much ran out of gears. I didn't have the correct gear selected for that, and then punched a little harder for this sprint here, looking a lot better. The MAGENE being 1 point off for the sprint. I have no concerns with that. That's pretty much just your recording differences between two head units. But again, the peak power looking pretty close. Let's grab those, and the ramp and the ride along. 134, 132.48 with some stop starts. The MAGENE probably a little higher because it just spikes a little bit right there as I come off those two intervals. And probably the hardest new addition to the Lama lab test that I've added, which is a standard ramp test in erg that goes for 2 minutes long, ending with just over 600 watts. That's out of the saddle there at the end. So we can see the trainer operating quite well for erg, stability-wise from here on in. So 100 watts, up to, well, things get a bit uglier around 550 watts, but I think we all do. that's out of the saddle through here, but overall the numbers, 186, 184.4, all looking pretty good. Okay, if you're still with me, onto the data summary of that. The power data exceeded my expectations against 4 other on-bike power meters, so that was great to see. The T300 Plus is definitely a lot more smooth, as was seen in my ride experience section of this video and the data graphs we just saw then. Erg mode is steady, no thermal drift indication, which is a big tick there. Cadence data is okay, but problematic in those roller coaster sections. And data quality was excellent. No dropouts or regular dropouts on Bluetooth, Ant Plus throughout my testing. So that's a big tick there though. Alrighty, onto the overall summary of this trainer. Look, the T300 Plus is a big step in the right direction, up from the T300, which had a few identified issues. MAGENE have successfully addressed all the pain points on that model and have themselves a better product because of it. Now, I am glad to see this trainer repositioned to the mid-range, with the T600 now taking the premium spot for MAGENE. Without that repositioning, I probably would have been more critical of the T300 Plus, as it's just a refinement on an existing product. It's not really a big generational leap forward. That's what the T600 is hoping to produce. Now, truth be told, I probably could have wrapped this video up in around 10 seconds, with at the end just saying 2 words, and those being much improved, because that summarizes my experience with the T300 Plus. But that's not really how I work. I actually like doing the workouts. The Lama lab test is a solid session, and it is always interesting to put the claims of what's been fixed to the test. Alrighty, with that, we'll leave it there. The only question outstanding though is, how does the T600 stack up? Now that does come with all the Generation 2 bells and whistles. Stay tuned on that one. As always, if you've enjoyed this content, give it a thumbs up, hit subscribe to be across more videos uploaded to this channel, and we shall see you soon.